Hey everybody, hey, this is Mike Kohler coming to you from Mike Kohler Fitness. In this video, we're going to be talking about the rotator cuff, primarily the internal rotators of the rotator cuff. I did a video on the external rotators, look that up. It's a great video teaching you all the muscles of the external rotators of the shoulder. But this video will focus on the internal rotators, okay? And I just want to preface this by saying that most people do not need anywhere near as much internal rotation work as they do external rotation work, primarily because most people love training their chest. Now, your big pecs are internal rotators. You know, when you're doing your bench press, when you're doing your flies, when you're doing your cable crossover type work, you're getting a lot of internal rotation. Your lats an internal rotator. So there's a lot of big, powerful muscles that actually internally rotate the shoulder. And in my opinion, most people have an imbalance where their external rotators are too weak. So primarily focus on external rotation when you're doing these isolated movements to help your shoulder. If you have some shoulder issues, I would say it's more important to probably work on external rotation, but it's still good to know some good internal rotation movements too in case that's your issue and you want to focus on internal rotation. Okay, let's go over some of the primary internal rotators of the rotator cuff. The big one is the subscapularis, subscap. And you know, on the skeleton, you know, the subscap runs on the front part, the anterior side of your scapula. Similar to the infraspinatus, which is the antagonist, does the exact opposite of the subscap. So infraspinatus externally rotates because it attaches on the back. Subscap internally rotates because it attaches to the front and attaches to the front part of the humerus. So it's a great internal rotator. Okay, the other one is actually teres major. Teres major also attaches down low on the scapula, but it also attaches on the inside of the humerus, so it's also a big internal rotator. And then obviously, you know, the big pectoral goes from your sternum to your clavicle. Here's a big internally rotator. Your big lat comes up, attaches here. That's also an internal rotator as well. But when it comes to the rotator cuff, the primary internal rotators, I would say, are subscap and teres major. Okay, so now that we know where these muscles attach, let's talk about primarily how they work. One thing you really have to keep in mind is that subscap is a big fan-shaped muscle. That means it attaches along this anterior, along the whole medial border, so it's very wide, but then focuses and becomes narrow when it attaches to the humerus. So when you're doing your internal rotation work, it's really important to do it at different angles. I would do some work down close, then I would do some work with your arm away from your body, then I also would do some work with your arm high up. What that does is that when you're lifting your arm, it's really hitting different parts of subscapularis. If you did all your work down low, you really wouldn't be effectively fully developing and strengthening all the different fibers of the muscle. So I would do some of your cable work low, some mid-range, some high range, okay? And that goes through with anything. You have to always look at any muscle that's kind of like a fan-shaped muscle, same thing as the pectoral. You want to train the pec with your arm at different angles to fully develop and strengthen the pectoral. Okay, so let's go over some basic movements we can do with the band that will work teres major and that will work subscapularis. Okay, let's go over some basic band moves we can do for the internal rotators of the rotator cuff. Okay, primarily we're hitting that subscap, like we said, in teres major. Okay, let's do that classic internal rotation movement. We're gonna keep the elbow tucked in. What you want to be careful with is you want to keep your wrist nice and straight. You don't want to do wrist flexion. Like a lot of people try to flex the wrist. You really want the motion to come from the rotator cuff itself, like just turning your arm or turning the humerus inside the shoulder joint. So chest up, back flat. I always like to pack my neck slightly. I'm going to be moving my neck to show you guys, but I would do this with a packed neck. You're going to come in and you can come back nice and slow. I would do a really slow eccentric contraction. You also want to think about where is gravity coming from. See right now there's gravity here. If I come all the way in, see how there's no gravity? But if I turn my body a little bit to the right, now I have more tension when I come in with my internal rotation. Another thing you want to be careful with too is that, you know, if you are doing this because you have shoulder issues, obviously you want to be careful. You don't want to do anything in pain. And you definitely do not want the band to bring you into or snap you into a position of pain. Okay, so always keep that in mind. Don't let this band pull you beyond what your active, what your normal range is. How you can test that first, let go of the band. First see how much external rotation, like how much range do you have here, okay? Do not let that band pull you beyond whatever range you have. So kind of eyeball it. See, this is all I have in external rotation. So I'm going to start this motion at my full range of external rotation. I'm not going to go beyond that, but I am going to fully internally rotate, pause, and then come back nice and slow. I would do a relatively slow rep cadence. I would say at least 5, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the eccentric, and you come back a little quicker on the concentric. Research has shown that slow eccentric training is great for strengthening the tendons. So primarily maybe while you're doing this is you may have some issues with your tendons and you are recommended to do some internal rotation, okay? And like we talked about in the beginning of the video, since subscap is a fan-shaped muscle, you don't want to just do it down here, this motion. You also want to do it higher up. So I'm going to grab a towel and let's do the movement with our arm a little further away from the body to hit more of those muscle fibers from a different angle. There's the same technique, chest up, back flat, slightly pack. First test, see what you have actively. That's where you start. You come in nice and slow and back even slower. You come in nice and slow and back even slower. I would do about 15 to 20 reps of those movements of both exercises, and maybe start up with 1 set, maybe work up to 2 sets. But let's do one last final movement to really hit all the fibers along the fan of that muscle of subscap. This last one we're going to do up high. Okay. Now be careful not to go too high. You don't want to impinge the shoulder. You don't want to jam that humerus into the top of the acromion and clavicular joint. You want to keep it in a nice, comfortable position. I would say a little bit lower than shoulder height, when you're doing your internal rotation from high up. And it's the same concept. Let's go 1 foot forward, chest out, back flat. I would go down and then come up nice and slow, a real slow eccentric contraction. You should be in that pack neck position. I'm just turning my head to talk to you guys through the video, but down nice and slow and up nice and easy. Well, that's great. Those are 3 great movements that you can do to fully strengthen the internal rotators of the rotator cuff. And let's talk about something. This is something I did with the infraspinatus on the external rotation video as well. There's a term I learned from Gary Gray. It's called isolated integration. Basically what it is that you're holding this position and you're going to challenge internal rotation by rotating the body. I'm rotating from the hip. So what I'm doing here is that it's a static, like an isometric contraction of the internal rotators, but I'm challenging it by integrating it by doing a rotation movement from the hip. It's actually a cool term, isolated integration. The whole idea is that you're isolating a certain muscle group, a certain muscle, which is the internal rotator, subscap, teres major, and then you're challenging it in an integrated way by moving the whole body. It's a really cool term, that's isolated integration. Okay, well, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram. I've been trying to post these videos like really every single week. I try to put a video or 2 up for, to help everyone stay in top shape. And I always like to end these videos by saying, if you live in Westchester, New York, and you're looking for a great gym to work at, and check out my gym, Mike Cola Fitness. I'm Mike Cola. I've been doing this for over 25 years.